Should you marry somebody who loves you but lacks compassion for strangers? That's the topic of today's Hello Hayes letter. I'm going to read it to you now and then I'll give some advice in real time. Let's get into it. Hello Hayes. My boyfriend isn't always as empathetic as I wish he was. I, on the other hand, tend to be overly empathetic and cry for random people, like if I see a video or hear a sad story, but I guess no one really benefits from this empathy. We've been dating for 3.5 years and I love him, although we're quite different in a lot of ways. He's not bad different, just different. Definitely not the compassionate, caregiving personality I always envisioned I would marry. He's Greek and comes from a conservative religious household, and I come from an American household that isn't religious. He is fiscally conservative and works in finance, and I'm moderately liberal and work in healthcare. I've been okay with our political differences most of the time because he's socially liberal and accepting of all people. I think because his family emphasizes a family above all else mentality, he tends to show a lot of compassion for family members and for me, but not so much for others. My family, on the other hand, is very big on showing compassion and helping others outside our inner circle. But I've come to realize from my boyfriend that sometimes you should start within your home before thinking of grand ways to help people outside of it. I see how that could be overlooked, and I'm sure some people forget to focus on the people who are supposed to matter most. Physically, my boyfriend is thin and nerdy looking. Most of my friends would probably say he's not good looking, but I came to find him attractive after getting to know him and building a friendship. I have to admit, though, that this attraction certainly fluctuates, and sometimes I don't feel attracted to him. When we first started dating, I was infatuated, but lately things are just normal. Not exciting, but comfortable. I just don't know how it's supposed to feel at this point. I used to think for sure we'd get married, but now I feel confused whether that's a good idea. I've always thought that if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no when choosing who to marry. But it's so much more complicated because when you date for years, isn't it normal for attraction and excitement to fluctuate? What do you think, Hayes? Yours, too big a heart. Too big a heart. There are so many layers in this letter. There are so many interesting layers in this letter. That's part of why I chose it earlier. There's so many directions we can go. But the first thing I want to talk about is your empathy. I want to talk about how your empathy in your life right now is sort of being framed as, it is being framed as a problem. And it's interesting because I wonder if you feel like you're having an empathy crisis in your life, and yet in the larger context of the world, we are also having an empathy crisis. I really want you to reframe how you see your empathy. Something that makes me sad while listening to your letter is how you've been convinced, or you've been convincing yourself, that the compassion you feel for others, the empathic way that you think about others, the space you create in your heart when you hear about others' plea for help, you've been thinking that that's a thing that not only is useless, but like potentially is a thing that could ruin your relationship. And sometimes I think in our relationships, when we fear our relationships will be ruined, it feels like our life is going to be ruined. And oh my gosh, those stakes must feel so high. Your empathy is so needed in this world. The fact that you can watch videos or hear other people's stories of people who you don't know or who may have different experiences from you, perhaps even in some way could be like perceived as an enemy. You're not using enemy language, but I think that so much of so much of the way the world is positioned now is so like black and white. Are you on this side? Or are you on that side? And it's created this, like, we see other people who feel differently than us or who have different experiences from us or experiences that we don't understand. Sometimes it's easy to see them as an enemy. If you're able to look at people who are different from you, who may have experiences that you don't understand, and you feel something for them, you're moved to tears, or you feel something kind of rattle inside you, we need more of that. And it worries me how that could be being weaponized in your relationship, or it's framed as something that you need less of, You don't. Your empathy is a gift. And, I'm thinking about how, are there times where somebody's empathy is actually not a good thing? And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself to talk a little bit about the family first, to talk a little bit about this like family first mentality, because there's lots of details that you include about how you and your boyfriend are different. There's the Greek conservative religious thing, there's the American non-religious, there's the politics. I think it's possible to be in a relationship with someone who is different from you. People of different cultures and different backgrounds and different political leanings do come together. Maybe the political piece feels harder now more than ever, though I kind of imagine it always felt hard. I'd be so curious how, if I could talk to people in the at times, I don't know how we'd measure this. Like, what are some of I definitely think we are in a dumpster fire. Certainly doesn't begin to cover it, but we're in an incredibly divisive time. And I wonder, looking back, like, what are the other really divisive times? Is it always marked by a time of world war? Like, what would be those markers? But I'd be curious if we could compare how much politics play a role in relationships. Like, is it more now than ever before? Because I hear myself saying that and I kind of wonder whether it's true. Like, has politics always mattered a lot among progressive leaning people? Has it always mattered more to progressive people? Has it always mattered more to certain empathic people? Not to say that people who are, I really want to be careful to not fall into to not fall into language of like conservative people aren't empathetic, because even though in my experience, sometimes that might seem true, I don't think that creating those divides and lines has actually done any good. But where was I going with that? What alarms me is not the fact that you are different. Maybe alarm is too strong of a word to be talking to somebody who is really in the thick of the pain and the confusion. But I think you're ready to hear it. What strikes me is how your boyfriend seems to be using this veil of like family first and we care for each other, which is a wonderful quality, a quality that I'm sure a lot of us want. We want to feel taken care of in our families, but he's using that as a tool to like push down your care for others. Family first is a great thing. I would want to be with somebody. I did choose somebody who values family and who I feel like would put me first. But to use it as a way to downplay your other interests, to use it as a way to downplay your compassion for others, I really dislike that. That feels alarming to me, because I think what's so scary about, how do I frame this? Because family first is such kind of can be such an admirable, sexy, alluring, wonderful quality. It's almost like the greatest tool to manipulate someone, to be like, your family should matter most. Family matters most. So why care about all of these other things? And I can see how easy it could be to like fall into that hole of being like, oh, you're right. Why do I care about these other people on the other side of the world? Why do I care about that? Because I should actually just care about the people right in front of me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll focus more on my family. It's like, if someone can understand what I'm saying, like you help me articulate it. But it seems almost just like a tool to keep you quiet. It seems like a tool to keep you quiet, but we need more loud, empathetic voices. And we need those voices at home, in your private conversations, in our conversations with friends and family. Like, that is where your empathetic voice needs to be heard. And to go back to like the political, we lean different politically. Like, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this constantly. I've thought about the topic of like, how do you have relationships with people who have different political leanings, political beliefs, but also like moral beliefs, different standpoints. Like, this has been on my mind probably all of my adulthood, or maybe since college, which I guess is all of my adulthood. And I don't know, I used to have a much more black and white view on it, like, and I still kind of do. Like, I wouldn't have chosen a partner who didn't share many of the beliefs that I have. However, I'm not sure it's entirely possible to only strive to be in relationships with people who have political sameness to us. I understand and really relate to like wanting that. Like, you only want to be with people and surround yourself with people who feel exactly the same about a variety of topics as you do. Excuse me, coffee burp. And certainly there are going to be some deal breakers, or deal breakers maybe isn't the right word, but like certainly there are going to be some issues that are like no flex zone here. But the reason I think it's less about do we believe the same things, and it's more about do we approach differences the same, or do we both approach these conversations and these do we approach these conversations with a desire to learn? Does this person that I am pursuing a friendship with, a romantic relationship, a fucking marriage, is this person willing to be wrong? Is this person willing to examine the beliefs that they've believed to be true about themselves and their people forever? Like, are they willing to question things that they were taught in elementary school? Are they willing to learn about something they don't know about? Like, that to me is more important than, okay, let's go on a date. Like, what's your standpoint on the defund the police movement? Like, if we only strive for political sameness right now, I think we also, because aren't we here to like learn and grow? Like, I think about like my grandmother and how, and this was sort of towards the end of her lucid, you know, my grandma has Alzheimer's, and this was in 2020 when the Black Lives Matter movement was going on. We had some conversations of like the protests that were going on in New York City, and she had a lot of fear about me being in New York City because she was seeing a lot of stuff on the news, and we had a lot of conversations to kind of teach her what was going on and why these protests were so important and what they stood for and what was real versus what was inciting fear on the news. And she was, you know, I'm as I'm saying this now, I'm so curious how much of, I mean, she was already sick and she was on a steep decline at that point. And in retrospect, thinking about some of those conversations we had, like maybe those were some of the signs, actually, like some of the rigidness that she had. I wonder if some of that was like the dementia starting to kind of kick in. But what a beautiful thing that in her late 70s, she was able to still learn. And of course, someone in their late 70s is very different than a 25-year-old who like hasn't taken the time to fucking learn. Like what? So that's all fair. But I don't know. Choosing to only pick someone who agrees with you 100% on every single topic, I think that's impossible. And I know that letter writer, too big a heart, that isn't what you are saying here. But it just felt, I was thinking about that while reading the letter, and some people might harp on that. Like you're with somebody who's fiscally, how did you fucking say it? Even though fiscally conservative, socially liberal is like such a, I see a certain type of man when I hear that descriptor. And let me tell you, it's, is it a man that I steer clear of? I mean, I certainly know a lot of these men in my life. Who would you run faster from? Fiscally conservative, socially liberal, or fiscally liberal, socially, well, yeah, definitely fiscal. Definitely fiscally liberal, socially conservative. Those fuckers are scary. Don't run on a tangent here, Hayes. I just felt like I needed to acknowledge the political piece. You said I've been okay with our political differences most of the time because he's socially liberal and accepting of all people. Accepting of all people, except for when he feels triggered by how much empathy you feel for others, right? Accepting of all people is such a blanket term. And in practice, it means so many things. Like, it's really easy for someone to be like, yeah, I'm accepting of all people. But then when it actually comes to your behavior or the things you say or in practice, like, are you actually accepting of all people? If your boyfriend is trying to shrink your empathy for others, like, is he actually? I don't know. That's something to think about. Okay, I know I already touched on the family first mentality a little bit, but I want to go back in. I think that the family first attitude, like, is a good one and can be a good one. And his specific point that I guess he's trying to make to you, which is like, focus on the people around you before you focus on people who you don't even know. There are perhaps some circumstances where that would make sense. I'm thinking of a doctor who pours all of their time into saving patients, but is actually very avoidant of their emotions and their children at home. Okay. I'm thinking of maybe like an activist might fall into the same type of challenge between helping others, but then neglecting people at home. I think there are certainly like situational moments where that might make sense, but that advice as a blanket statement, focus on the people around you rather than focusing on others, it doesn't work. It works in very specific contexts, but certainly it doesn't apply to you right now who's feeling empathy for people in the world and for things you see on the internet. Now, sure, like if I extend a little bit more graciousness towards your boyfriend or towards this idea that maybe your empathy is a lot, could it be annoying if like anytime you see a video on TikTok, you're bursting into tears and cascading into despair and hopelessness? Sure. And maybe there actually is something for you to work on there, like how to not feel hopeless and in despair and instead do something with these feelings. There's so much we can do. There's so much we can do to feel like we are helping others in little ways. The little ways are big ways, right? It all starts somewhere. But that's not what your boyfriend's saying, right? It'd be one thing if your boyfriend is saying, hey, babe, you clearly really care about this cause, about this issue. It's bringing you to tears every time you see it. I don't want you to just be sitting here staring at your phone crying. Like, let's think of something you can do with all this empathy, right? Now that would be a wonderful thing, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying family above all else. He's saying family above all else, and that sometimes you should start within your home before thinking of grand ways to help people outside of it. I'm sorry, but like, does your boyfriend feel neglected by you? I shouldn't say that so sarcastically. I wonder, I mean, there's certainly the chance that that could be going on, that he's like, why don't you show the same interest to me? But frankly, I think he if that were the case, like, let's grow some confidence, right? There's space for the person in your life to care for you and for things outside of you. What did you say? You wrote, I see how this is something that's often overlooked, this being paying attention to your family. And I'm sure people forget to focus on the people who are supposed to be the most important. Yes, but I don't think that's a problem for you. Again, I feel like that's just being used to, I feel like it's being used for him to try to erase one of your differences that he doesn't like. Or maybe he doesn't even, maybe I shouldn't even say that. He might not dislike the fact that you're empathetic, though it does seem like he picks on it. You actually are just starting to notice this difference for yourself. Which I should say, since I haven't said it yet, it's really hard to be in a relationship with somebody for so long, a relationship, a friendship, whatever, and to suddenly start to feel those warning signs of like, I'm not sure this is right. Something doesn't feel right. And sometimes the things that feel weird are just like growing pains. I think there's a lot of truth in that relationships don't feel easy all the time. You might not see eye to eye all the time. That's true. But to start to feel a major gap, like you said, he's not the compassionate person I always thought I'd marry. Babe, that's not saying like I used to think, I'll make it personal for a second. I used to think that I would marry somebody who was like really stylish and like really into art and like fancy things and like writing. I thought I would marry somebody who kind of was like a male version of me. Now, Brian is not those things. I got over that. Every now and then when he, comes out wearing the same outfit that he wore 10 years ago, that like, I'm like, please, can we get a new fucking pair of cargo pants, please? Does it ever cross my mind? What would it have been like to, marry a man who liked to shop? Sure. I think that's normal. It's, what's the word? Stupid. Stupid is literally not the word. There's a much better word for what I'm trying to describe. Is that materialistic of me? Is that like vain of me? Yeah, it is. So that's why I don't let it drive my decisions. However, of course I could compromise on that. What I couldn't have compromised, I also always dreamed of being with somebody who was sensitive. And Brian is deeply sensitive, more sensitive probably than I could have imagined I would find a partner. I don't want you to compromise on these traits that are like so true to your values and your morals. You want a compassionate man? Marry a compassionate man. Marry a man, be with a man who feels something for others, or at the very least, like loves that about you and celebrates how you have deep compassion. Because sure, there are some people, like, I don't want to, there are some folks who show their emotions differently. Not everybody is going to show empathy and compassion in the same way. You might be loud and tears and colorful, and like you might be really vocal about what you feel, and other people are much quieter but feel it all the same. Like, so I don't want to discriminate against those folks. Is that the case with your boyfriend? Like, is it just that he's uncomfortable showing emotions, or is he truly, because if he's truly like not compassionate towards others himself and doesn't celebrate that about you and want to borrow that a little bit from you, I don't think that's your man. I don't think that's the man you marry. If what you're saying is true, that it is so innate to you. And look, we do pick people who like bring out the best in us, or who bring out parts of us that we didn't know existed. But I'd say that after 3.5 years, if you were going to bring out his empathetic side, it probably would have already happened. On to the, is it normal for attraction to fluctuate? Is it normal for attraction to fluctuate? I will say, and everyone chime in here. I'm 10 years into my romantic relationship, 5 years, it'll be 5 years in September into my marriage. In my experience, attraction to my husband, like my feeling attracted to Brian doesn't change. Are there moments where I don't feel like having sex? Absolutely. Are there moments where I'm like, your feet fucking smell? Like, no, like get away from me right now. It's actually, I'm using that example because he really needs to throw out a pair of, speaking of the cargo pants, he has this pair of sneakers that he's like emotionally holding on to for some reason, and they fucking smell. And his feet have smelled. He's going to kill me for saying this. His feet have smelled the last couple of nights, and we're like sitting on the couch watching TV, and I keep being like, your fucking feet. We got to do something about your fucking feet. Is that stopping me from having sex with him? No, it is not. But I'm bringing up that example because I can be like, your feet are gross, man. And even more than that, there are days where I'm like, I don't want to be kissed. I just right now, like, I'll cuddle, but I don't want something else. That's normal. And I think that what is normal within those ranges will be different from person to person. I'm sharing my truth so you know what's normal for me, and then it maybe you'll feel more comfortable in that being normal for you. But it's never been, I'm not sure I'm attracted to Brian. Like, there are in the moment times when I'm not in the mood and I'm not feeling it, but I'm not feeling anybody. It has nothing to do with him. I think more largely, and I'm going to avoid making like really broad, definitive generalizations because I think sexuality is such a spectrum. I know sexuality is such a spectrum. Some people are in very loving relationships where they are not attracted to their partners because they don't feel physical attraction in that way. That doesn't apply to you, person I'm speaking to right now, because you do feel attraction to others and you have felt attraction to your boyfriend, but lately you maybe haven't. I would wonder if that is the side effect of these deeper emotional things that you're talking about. Because you said, and even in the beginning, you didn't find him attractive at first, but you eventually did because of his wonderful personality. Well, if his wonderful personality is starting to be a little bit more questionable, then yeah, it would make sense that your physical attraction would dwindle with it. You asked, it's funny also, you're like, my friends would probably think he's not attractive. The thin and nerdy looking, I think he sounds cute for what it's worth. That description alone, physical and nerdy looking, for anybody, and I say that thin and nerdy looking because if any of you listening are thin and nerdy looking, know that I find you attractive. You asked about marriage, and this is interesting. Like, when it comes to the person you're going to marry, if it's not a hell yes, is it a hell no? And can it be more complicated than that? If I had to pick a side, I'd say that when it comes to marriage, it should be a hell yes about the person. I think it is, for a lot of us, it is impossible to escape fears of marriage. Like, normal to not be 100% certain about the concept of marriage and what's going to happen 20 years, 50 years down the line. Normal to have all of those questions. We couldn't possibly have 100% certainty for all of that. I think anybody who says they do is lying or doesn't exist in a mind that allows them to change their mind on things. Or I don't know. I think there are some people like that who can't even begin to fathom that, like, oh, maybe I will feel differently about my husband in 15 years than I do now because I'm changing. Hopefully we grow together. And hopefully I've picked a person who, even with those changes, I will still want to be changed and right next to you. Hopefully you pick someone like that. But some people don't. Some people don't even allow their minds. Some people don't have the permission at all to change. But I probably wouldn't pick someone who I didn't feel hell yes about. Now, that's not the same thing as like, I get annoyed with them sometimes. Is that okay? Or we don't love all the same things. Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. But if there is really something that that gnaws at you, I mean, we all know, you know what it's like to have an instinct, to have a gut instinct that we ignore. I wouldn't ignore any of those when choosing to get married. Like, why get married? Why do it? Why make your life so much more complicated? I think marriage is great. I don't think marriage is necessary. I love being married. But like, marrying the wrong person makes your life so much more complicated. It does. And if there's any part of you that isn't sure that you are a good, like, spiritual cell level, like that you aren't a good match, don't do it. I think it needs to be a hell yes in that way. Hell yes, I'm confident about you and your bones and what you're made of. It needs to, I would say, yeah, it needs to be a hell yes there. It doesn't need to be a hell yes, I'm super confident about marriage in general and I'm super confident about what the rest of my life is going to look like. But I think you need a hell yes about the person that you're going to do it with. It's not worth it to do it otherwise. Like, marriage is great, but it's not great unless it's right. I'm so proud of you for asking these questions. Too big a heart? And no, I don't think your heart is too big. I think your heart is actually so big that you're still trying to create space for something that might not be right for you anymore because you remember what it felt like when it was right. I hope listening to this, something clicked, that you got some clarity. And if anybody else listening isn't in this exact situation where they're dating somebody and there's this big gaping hole that's starting to widen, if there's any relationship in your life where you, I don't know, are feeling some of these things, I hope it made something click for you. Is there anything else that I wanted to say on this one? I think that's it. I think I covered everything. All right, advice letter over. And now we're going to move on into the next part of our creativity Q&A. That's the next thing I want to cover in this episode. If you guys remember a few episodes back, I did the first part of a creativity writing Q&A. You guys sent me all these questions on Instagram and on YouTube. Thank you, everybody who contributed. And when I was reviewing all of the questions, as a reminder, it just became way too large for one episode. So today, I'm doing part 2. First step was all about getting started. Go back and listen to that episode. It's a standalone episode, how to get started in the process. But today, the rest of this episode, we're going to talk about the practice. Actually, like, getting down into the nitty-gritty of what does a writing practice, a creative practice, actually look like. And if you're watching this episode on YouTube and you haven't liked it yet, please give the video a like. That really helps get the video in new people's eyes and ears, and I appreciate that so very much. And if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't given it a 5-star review yet on your audio platform, please do that too. Those little things really make a big difference for me in growing the show. So, okay, questions. No more groveling for your validation. That's not really groveling. Is it groveling? Why is it that asking for things like that feels so uncomfortable? I gotta get better at that. So anyway, question 1 about the creative practice, the practice of writing is, what is your writing process, Hayes? And how do you find one? Do you think a writing process is actually needed to succeed at the craft? I think that the process of finding your process is the work of improving your craft, if that makes sense. Like, you only find a writing process that works for you by trying a lot of different things. For me, that's meant reading about the processes and structures of other writers that I admire, reading about how they think about writing. Like that's really one of my favorite genres. I love reading craft books. Whenever I find an author that I become obsessed with, I want to learn everything about them and their writing process to see if there's something in there that could be useful for me. My writing process is extremely messy, not at all efficient, and quite grueling a lot of the time. But you know who makes it most grueling? Me. When I am dishonest with myself about what my process is. I think you find your process by really noticing what you are like when you sit down at the page, really noticing how you get from an idea to something that you feel proud of, like what were all of the steps that went in there, and then being really honest with yourself about what kind of writer you are. Like, I like to write really messy first drafts. My process is like, and I've resisted this process. I'm telling you all of this, and I still resist. I know what my writing process is. I know how I create my best work. And I still resist it sometimes because I'm annoyed by it. I'm annoyed that my first drafts are so fucking messy and they're like way too confessional and they're not well written. But my first drafts are very much brain dump. Get it out on the page. They're basically glorified outlines. And then I know that from there, I begin editing it. And I begin moving things around and I begin cutting a lot of stuff, getting rid of a lot of stuff. Sometimes I could write 1,000 words and there's only one sentence in there, almost, 800 words in. And that sentence is actually the thing that needs to be brought to the top. That frustrates me. That whole process frustrates me because I wish that I could just write. I wish that my first drafts were perfect, right? But when I begin a draft or when I begin an idea, when I begin a piece of writing being like, this is annoying that this isn't perfect, all that makes me do is not start the process. So I have to be honest with myself that it takes me a really shitty first draft. Anne Lamott coined that phrase, shitty first drafts. I will plug Bird by Bird again, one of my favorite kind of inspirational writing books that changed my perspective on a lot of writing stuff. And it's a good one for beginners, I think. There's another craft book I'm reading right now by Vivian Gornick, who it's called The Situation and the Story, and it's about focus on essay writing and memoir writing. And I'd say that's more of like an advanced craft book, but Bird by Bird is great if you're sort of beginning your writing, creating journey. I write really shitty first drafts that I'd be horrified for you to read. I'd be horrified for you to read them. I'm sometimes horrified reading them, but I know that they're the beginning of my journey. And I only found that by like trying, I've tried all sorts of things. When I've tried to write long, like when I have a draft of a novel that I've mentioned that will never, it's a bad novel, but I wrote a novel because I wanted to write a novel and I had this idea. And anyway, when I started writing that, I tried to outline it. At first, I tried to just start drafting it. Great. I got thousands of words in. Okay, then I got stuck. So then I'm like, maybe actually I need to try writing an outline because I know that some writers do outlines. So then I tried to do an outline, but then I'm writing the outline and I essentially was just writing a draft. And I'm like, wait, I don't know how to do an outline. I don't know how to just summarize a chapter in 2 sentences. So now I'm going to go back to drafting. That is the writing process. Trying all sorts of different things and seeing what feels right for you. And you know what else is the writing process? Like doing a little bit of everything. When something gets hard, pivot and try a new approach. And then when that gets hard, pivot, try a new approach. But yes, I do think a process is necessary to succeed at the craft, but it's less the process that you find, more your willingness to engage in the process. That's what's necessary. If you get too frustrated when it feels hard, or you get too frustrated when you need to change course, I don't know if you'll be a successful writer, because so much of being a writer, in my experience, is learning how to deal with frustration, disappointment, etc. The next question. Do you have a creative warm-up that you do before you start the real thing? And warm-up and the real thing are in quotes here. I feel like that's really speaks to that shitty first draft idea I was talking about. I think that my creative warm-up is that first draft, but I don't call my first drafts. They're not fake. They are the beginning. It's like it's the lob of clay, right? If you look at the Michelangelo, Was the lob of clay not the real thing when he first started Statue of David? Michelangelo's the artist, not the statue. When Michelangelo was crafting, is it the David? Who's the naked guy? Who's the naked guy in Venice? David statue. Yeah, the statue of David. Okay. When Michelangelo was crafting the statue of David and he had that thing of clay in his hand, like that's not the warm up. Though maybe before he was doing something with his hands to get them nice and loose for the real sculpting he was going to do, but that was just the beginning of the real thing. The first indents with his thumb into the clay, that was the real thing. So no, I think my first drafts are my creative warm up, but I do a lot of I've been trying to like voice note myself my ideas more, or voice dictate into my notes app, and I was doing a lot of that when I was still unable to type with the broken elbow. And that's been really helpful. That's like a really useful tool to kind of get some of the gunk out. Sometimes it can feel so intimidating when you're writing because you're seeing the words come up on the page and they're so inadequate. The words that are on the page are just so insufficient. They do not capture the brilliant idea that was in your head. And that feels disappointing. And that disappointment is really hard to overcome. But you must overcome it if you want to get to the next sentence or ever get to the editing phase. But speaking into your phone and not seeing the words, that can be like a great first step, like a good barrier to entry. Removes the barrier to entry, I guess. Different people will do different things though. Like I'm sure all sorts of people. Some people might dance in their, ow, oh God, sorry. I'm getting cocky with my elbow here. I just like, if you're watching the video, you'll see that I just kind of flung I talk with my hands. You guys know me. You've seen me in videos. I talk with my hands, and I just flung my right hands to the right. And as soon as I did it, the elbow went a little too far, and it just, I felt it all up and down my body. But I'm okay. I'm okay. Anyway, I'm sure some people dance. I'm sure some people read. There are certain books that are always on my desk, and they switch depending on what I'm writing. And sometimes the creative warm-up will be like reading a random Truth and Beauty by Anne Patchett. A memoir is one of the books that is on my desk these days. And sometimes I'll just open up to a random page and I'll read a page out loud so I can hear the rhythm of what she's doing. I can see the way that she drops into a scene. Anne Patchett does so many things with her writing that I want to do with my writing. And that can be kind of like a creative warm-up. But everything you do in your writing process is the real thing. So that's one thing I'll say. Everything is the real thing. All right, next question. How do you make your own schedule for your writing? I find it hard because it feels like I have to be in the zone or have creative juices flowing. I think so much of this is about discipline, but making your schedule for your writing is a huge piece of figuring out what process works best for you. I have learned that I write best in the morning before I have been distracted by the day. Now, sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes distractions happen in the morning and I have to deal with them, but I do my best work. I feel best about myself. I'm most productive when I am getting up at a little after 6, between 6 and 6:30. I'm making my coffee. I'm forcing some food down my throat so that the coffee won't destroy my stomach and I won't spend all my writing time shitting myself. And then I can write. And I can write without distraction. And the dog has made that a little bit more complicated. But anyway, that's all beside the point. I learned early on that it was hard for me to get into the flow state required for my writing when I'd already been doing emails, when I already had meetings, when I'd spoken to my mother, list goes on and on and on. And I think a lot of you listening, like we have responsibilities for work, for family that aren't our writing. And those take up a lot of time. So maybe the best time for you to write would be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., but you can't do that because you have a job. And for that, I'd say your options are early in the morning or late at night. And I think it is about discipline. And I have a whole episode on discipline. If discipline feels like a dirty word to you, I've had to really reframe my relationship with discipline. And kind of come up with a new definition for me, because discipline and shame can be very close. So if you have a very busy day and you want to make time for your writing, but you're struggling to get up in the morning and you're struggling to stay up late, shaming yourself, being like, well, if I was a real writer, I would just do it. That never works. That's never worked for me. Shame has never helped me sustain my writing practice long term, and I'm not sure it's going to help you. What I learned to realize is that the days when I write are better than the days I don't. That doesn't always mean that my writing was brilliant and my writing was excellent and that I did any good work or even got anything done. But the days when I give myself time to write or edit, do the work of writing, they're better. I'm less everything bad. I am more of everything good and less of everything bad. And I want to feel better, you know? And when I started to really notice that when I write, I'm better in every way, I start to make time for it. Getting up early is not easy for me. It still is not easy for me, but I have started to create a routine around my writing in the morning that I look forward to. I got a really nice coffee machine and I love making my coffee in the morning. I love lighting a candle. And when I know that because I've sort of accepted like the magical, mystical, frustrating nature of what writing is, I'm able to sit down every morning and kind of have really low expectations. My only expectation is that I arrive. And that if I arrive, sometimes creative juices will flow, sometimes they won't, but that if I just arrive every day, I will be rewarded. And that has always proven to be true. Like, always. I have never, ever regretted sitting down to make time for writing. Even when I sit down and I don't get much done, I've never regretted it. And God, there's not much I can say that about in life. I don't think I have many other things in my life that like 100% of the time I do it and I don't regret it. Is that the right way to say it? 100% of the time I do it, I don't regret it. I don't know. Words are starting to feel hard. My computer's gonna die. Let me plug in my computer. Hold on, microphone's going down. Sorry guys. Okay, that would be so sad. That would be so sad if my questions just went away and I had to pause everything. So if you have to decide between morning or evening for your writing, as most professionals do, pick the time when you come alive. You know, out of the two options, when do you have a little bit more energy? And if you live with someone or you have friends in your life, like ask them to help hold you accountable. It would be so hard if Brian, for example, like wasn't in support of my writing. And there are times when I really don't feel like it, but he knows me and he knows how important it is to me and he knows that it makes me better. So he'll suggest it. He'll say, when are you going to write today? And that makes it really helpful too. Having someone to help hold you accountable for your writing schedule. How do you consistently show up for writing? I'm on to the next question. Every time I write something, I go days before writing again. Well, I feel like I answered that actually in that last question. I don't consistently show up for my writing. But every time I don't, I feel its absence in a way that I do not like. It also helps to like know what I'm working towards. Like, I know why I write. Beyond just the project that I am working on. Like, I write because writing helps me make sense of my experiences. It helps me place my experiences in a larger context. It helps heal me. And because it just helps me understand what's going on inside my head. It helps me figure out what I think and what I feel about things and what I still need help with. Writing makes me feel more connected to myself and more connected to others. And I know that my life is better when I'm in that act of writing and searching. I am a searcher. I've always been a searcher. I've always been a person looking for answers and wanting to feel better. That's the way I was born. Part of it are the circumstances I was born into, but part of it's just me. And writing is my tool of choice to discover, to become myself. And I believe that through improving my craft of writing, I can help other people do that too. It's easier for me to show up for my writing when I understand why I'm doing it and what my motivations are. And let me tell you, when I've lost sight of those motivations, as many of you have witnessed me lose sight of those motivations over the last 2 years as I've been making things publicly, it's been really hard to show up consistently. It's really hard to show up consistently when you don't know what your fucking purpose is or when your purpose becomes misaligned. That's a whole other thing. But I think that's how I consistently show up. I show up when I know what it is I'm working for and why it is I'm here. So ask yourself that if you want to be a writer. Why are you doing this? Why does it matter to you? What's at stake here for you? And if you go days before writing again, that's okay. That might be okay for you. I don't want you to listen to this and say, "Oh, Hayes works and writes every day." First of all, I don't. It's not every day. I try to do it every day, but I fail sometimes. But I don't want you to compare yourself to me. If Hayes writes every day, then that's the only way to do it. It might be fine for you to skip days, but if you're skipping days and you feel bad about it, I wonder what it would be like to try writing a little bit every day and making time for your writing every day, but removing the pressure for your writing to be perfect on those days, because that's suffocating. The only way to show up every day is if you create space for yourself to fail miserably or fail magically, actually. Oh, I like that. Instead of fail miserably, fail magically, fail masterfully, fail magically, I think. Next question, someone asked, I would love to ask about deadlines. I find myself highly motivated by them because without them, I'm highly likely to let the project go because it has no due date. How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep creative projects still enriching with a deadline? And how do you keep the deadline from killing your creative inclination? Okay, I love this. I need deadlines. I am a big deadline girl. However, I also have been too rigid with deadlines. And the thing about setting deadlines for your writing is that most of the time they're arbitrary. Yes, you could be on deadline. Maybe you are writing an article for a website and you're on deadline. You could have a book deal and you're on deadline. There are real deadlines, but a lot of the work of writing, if you're writing a novel or you're just getting into a writing practice, you're writing essays, you're writing a Substack, whatever, a lot of these deadlines are self-imposed. And I think part of the discipline of being a writer is setting deadlines. I need deadlines. I love deadlines. And I think a lot of people probably wouldn't, maybe this is just an insecurity of mine, but I have over the years as I've been working on my writing, I'm very loyal to my deadlines. I'm very loyal to my deadlines. I've had deadlines over the last couple of years for my writing, and I've been unable to go on a bachelorette party, or I've been unable to go to a birthday thing. Like, I've had to make some choices for my writing, and I stand by those choices. I would make those choices again. But I think it can be hard sometimes for other people to understand that my relationship with my writing is a relationship in my life that I value a lot, and I treat it like a relationship. It doesn't always come above my other relationships, but sometimes it does. That's a tangent. What you're asking is about when deadlines are good to have and when we need to push them to the side. It's funny you asked me this because I'm currently dealing with this right now. And I feel like I've finally turned a corner in my life where I'm willing to be flexible with my deadlines. I think in general, I've had a lot of fear with myself that, like, if I am too flexible with myself around my feelings or whatever, that I might fall apart. Maybe my pain will be too great. I don't know. I guess I've had a lot of trouble around flexibility sometimes because I'm not sure if I veer off my very rigid, strict course, like, will I be able to pull it together? And I set a deadline just after I broke my elbow. I had fallen behind on a writing project and I set a new deadline. And I started rigorously working towards that deadline, and I still am, and I'm making a lot of great progress. But about halfway through, I realized that I was actually making a lot of progress on a piece of this project that, like, I had a lot of momentum in finishing this draft. I thought that maybe I could edit the beginning of this project and make it all really beautiful and perfect by next week. But instead, as I was working, I was feeling like, you know what, you should actually, like, not stop to edit. You should continue with this draft. And over the last few days, I've had a lot of back and forth with myself of like, well, what should you do? What's the right move here? And the old me, or maybe a less confident version of me, would have been like, you can't afford to miss this deadline. You're running out of time. Edit the beginning, edit the beginning, edit the beginning. But I'm challenging myself to say, hey, I set this deadline a month ago. But I have new information now. I have new information and I have new momentum that I didn't know I was going to have. What would it look like for me to change that deadline? So sure, you wanted to meet with your writing group and workshop these perfect pages that you were going to have. I know it's disappointing that maybe you won't be able to do that, but this isn't a failure. In fact, it's actually really exciting. How exciting that you have the confidence to change the deadline because you have new information. It's okay that it's not going to be perfect because you're making progress, and deadlines are only there to help us continue with progress. If you're making progress, but the deadline isn't right, get rid of the deadline. The deadline isn't there. The deadline isn't there to force you into a box. The deadline is there to give you momentum. And for me, the deadline gave me momentum, and now I'm off to the races in a different direction, and I'm going to trust my intuition and follow that direction instead of being loyal to the deadline. I don't need to be loyal to a deadline. I need to be loyal to my process, loyal to my intuition, to my writerly gut. And that's what you'd need too. So I'm all for deadlines. Definitely set deadlines when you get started. Say, this week, I want to finish this essay. I want to finish this thing. But if you've been working all week and you get to the end and you're like, you know what? I have this new idea. I want to run with it. Run with it. Because the process, that's why we're here. The finished product will arrive when it's ready. The pizza will be done when it's done. But if you're enjoying the process, keep with it. If deadlines, though, are not helping you, then I'm not sure I see the point of them. Like, deadlines are there to help you and to stress you out just a little bit. Like, I think we do need a little bit of pressure. I'll speak for myself. I need a little bit of pressure. I need a little fire under my butt, but it needs to be like the perfect temperature. Too hot and I crumble. I'm pro deadline. I think that's all I have to say about deadlines. All right, someone else asked, thoughts on the pushing through creative block versus resting and recharging discourse? I don't think that they're opposite. Like, I think you need to push through creative block, and I think that you should take time to rest and recharge. I'm not sure a creative block even really happens. It's like, why are we so obsessed with putting a name on a moment that feels hard? Like, you could say I have creative block every single day when I sit down to work on my stuff, but it could also just be described as me trying to figure out what to do. Creative block is such a negative framing. Sometimes I'm stuck because I'm putting too much pressure on myself or because I'm literally exhausted, sure. But I think a creative life, a writing life, is filled with pushing through creative block every day and regularly making time to rest and recharge. Rest and recharge looks different for different people. I don't know that I believe in like 3 weeks on, 1 week off. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the best type of rest looks like for me. As I said, I feel best when I write every day or when I work on my stuff every day. Most days, it doesn't actually feel restful to take long amounts of time away from my work for me. It feels harder to get back in and creates all this stress. So like, I think you must rest and recharge, and I think you must push through. And I think you're only able to push through when you rest and recharge, because resting is what gives us the confidence to push through. So both. I think you got to do both. And then the final question is, how do you discern between fleeting sparks of inspiration? Sparkles, actually. Fleeting sparkles of inspiration. I love that. And fires that you should take time for. I don't think you need to discern that. I think the discerning comes through the exploring the ideas. When an idea comes, you don't need to decide whether it's a spark, a random spark, or something that will last and that you're going to give all this time towards. Like, you don't need to know that right away. Stop trying to figure out your ideas as soon as they arrive. What did I say last time? Like, your ideas don't want permission. They want your attention. And if you just give some of your ideas attention just for the fun of it, just for the joy and the play of indulging your creative ideas, from there, I think you'll be able to tell what was just a random idea that is like a funny note to have in your phone or an Instagram caption, or I don't know, or something that's longer and deserves time. Sometimes I've written things that I thought could sustain like 2,000 words or something, and I start writing it and I'm like, oh, you know what? I actually like don't have much to say about this. It really was just like a good tweet. I'm not on Twitter. I never was on Twitter, but that type of thing. But you know what? It's still fun to have the thought. The brain, the creative brain still is grateful that you allowed it to go from inside onto a piece of paper or into your voice notes or into a watercolor or whatever it is. So don't concern yourself too much, whether it's a fleeting sparkle or a burning fire. That doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you take a little bit of time to indulge the idea. Okay. I think that was it for the creative questions. I do love talking about these things. I don't know. I feel like I sort of failed at getting really specific there, but I feel like I failed at getting really specific there. So if there was something you heard me talking about that you wish I would go on a little bit deeper, I'd be happy to. And I'm sorry if I disappointed you there. Why am I even saying that? Don't say that. Don't put the idea in someone's head. I had an editor once, and I think about this all the fucking time. I used to, back in one of my old jobs when I was like writing for a website online, I would sometimes write a sentence and then I'd be like, you're probably thinking XYZ. You're probably thinking, why is sleep so important? You're probably thinking blah, blah, blah. And she left me a comment once. She's like, don't tell your reader what they're thinking. Because one, you might be putting a bad thought into their mind that they weren't actually thinking of yet. And also just let them think for themselves. Don't call it out. And it was a great edit in my writing, and it's also something that I think about in my speaking. So like, why did I just say to you that maybe I disappointed you? Because you might not be disappointed. Or if you're already disappointed, then you've probably stopped fucking listening. You're probably not hanging out with me still at the end of this episode. At the part of the episode when it's like we leave dinner and we're hanging out by our cars and we just keep having more conversations, and we both need to drive home because we have work early tomorrow, but we just can't stop because we love each other so much, and the conversation just never seems to end naturally because we're so deep in it. We're so deep in it with each other. I love you guys. This has been really fun. This is going well. This is feeling good. I hope it's feeling good for you because it's feeling good for me. I love you all. Thanks for listening. Give this episode a like on YouTube if you haven't yet. 5-star review on your podcast platforms. I'd so appreciate it. And if you like this episode, we have new episodes of Hello Haze every Tuesday. With that, I will see you next week. Bye, guys.